Well, hello, COS supporters, and welcome back to another episode of COS Live. My name is Andrew Woodruff. I will be your host for this episode. As you might see, Rita is not with me. She is at a tennis tournament with her daughter, watching her daughter compete and hoping that she is going to get first place. In the meantime, we have a jam-packed episode for you. We hope that you had an amazing Memorial Day, remembering our fallen heroes and remembering that our freedom does not come free. We're going to have an exclusive interview with a veteran that you might know, Pete Hegseth from Fox News. He hosts Fox and Friends Weekend, and he is an official COS endorser. We're going to be sitting down with him and talking with him in just a few minutes. We also have some news on some victories, and of course, we're going to be promoting this week's COS at home. We'll get to that in just a few minutes, but before we have, of course, our Article 5 trivia giveaway with COS Vice President Mike Ruthenberg. Mike, take it away.
Well, Andrew, thanks for having me on. Wow, what a great day it will be to be able to have a conversation with Pete Hegseth. We have a war veteran. We have an amazing broadcaster who supports convention states. I can only imagine the things that you guys are going to talk about when you guys proceed into the show. But for now, I get to share some educational thoughts and help you to understand convention of states and why we're battling for convention of states and why not only is it important for us to get this crazy resolution passed in 34 states, but also equally, if not more important, to build the grassroots army, which is just growing so incredibly quickly right now, given what's happening in our world, in our nation right now. And I want to make sure that you guys know everything you need to know about Convention of States and how Article 5 works. Of course, it's easy enough to pick up a Constitution. It's not very, very long to read. If you haven't read Article 5 recently, I would encourage you to read that. And here's one of the questions that might define how it works with Article 5. And before I jump into our trivia question, I want to tell you that we're going to have one heck of a prize today because our Convention of States store is going nuts. For Memorial Day, we sent out an email, and I think we sold out so quickly of so many things. We had this fundraiser tee that we made, and it sold out. We replenished. We were able to reopen because we're going to replenish so fast. But we have the Defiant shirt, of course. We have the We the People Decide shirt. We have the Hell No Joe shirt. Pretty soon we're going to have hats, I think in a week. You're going to see hats coming up. We got stickers. We got all kinds of things that are just coming into the store. So go to shopconventionestates.com and check out the cool stuff that we have there. And the prize this week for the first person to answer our trivia question today will be pick a t-shirt, any style you want, any size you want, and you will get that shipped to you at no charge. If you don't win, of course, just go to Shop Convention of States because every dime that goes into any shirt, whether it's the fundraiser tee or anything else that we have, goes directly to Convention of States, and it's probably the most fun way you can contribute to the cause of Convention of States. So for now, let's talk about a question that many of you should know the answer, so sharpen your fingertips, get them on the keyboard so you can be the first one to answer this question. And the question is, which governmental body or bodies are most important or is most important to triggering an Article 5 convention? Which governmental body or bodies is or are most important to triggering Article 5 convention? And I will be back at the end of the show to give you the answer if you haven't already seen it in all of the great comments that are coming in, that are pouring in right now. And we'll take it from here. Right now, for what you've really been waiting for, over to Andrew and the rest of the show.
Thanks, Mike. Well, before we get to our special guest, we have to talk about an amazing victory that happened in Nebraska last week. Now, if you weren't watching, Nebraska was able to revive the COS resolution. But I had to kind of set it up for you because about a month ago, there was a procedural move to take our resolution out of committee and to the floor for an up or down vote, which unfortunately failed. And of course, most COS opponents jumped at it and declared that COS was dead in Nebraska. But of course, our amazing grassroots volunteers, they were not deterred by this. And they worked with our primary sponsor, Senator Halloran, and other senators like Mike Flood to revive the COS resolution. In the final days of the Nebraska legislative session, Senator Mike Flood motioned to suspend the rules to revive the COS resolution, and he delivered an impassioned speech about why the Nebraska citizens deserved a chance to hear the COS resolution and to see it voted up or down. We have a short clip for you to watch.
I will tell you, and you may wonder, why did I file a motion to suspend the rules? One, it is that Senator Halloran has devoted a lot of his legislative service to going from point A to point B and getting this debated on the floor next session would be point B. The second reason I did it is that I walked into the Norfolk Public Library around the time this bill came up, and there were 350 people in the room that cared about this. And I saw folks in that room that I've known for a long time that want to see this question answered on the floor. And the people of Madison County and Woodland Park, Stanton County, Nebraska, they hired an advocate when they elected me. But I'm doing it because at the end of the day, I'd like to see the people of Nebraska get an up or down vote on a convention of states. I would appreciate your green vote, your affirmative yes vote to suspend the rules and allow this bill not to be killed. Thank you, Mr. President.
30 ayes, 14 nays to suspend the rule, Mr. President.
After this amazing speech, the committee overwhelmingly voted 30-14 to revive the COS resolution. But the victory didn't end there. Later on that night, the Committee of Government, Veterans, and Military Affairs voted 5-3 to advance the COS resolution to a full floor vote. This is an amazing victory because our resolution has been deadlocked in Nebraska. But thanks to the amazing grassroots supporters there and the legislative champions in the Nebraska legislature, we were able to advance our resolution. And early next year, Nebraska will vote on our resolution. There'll be a final floor vote. And if you don't know, Nebraska is a unicameral state legislature. So that means we will not need to go through multiple legislatures. It will just go to the Senate. And if it passes, this means that Nebraska will join the 15 other states that have passed the COS resolution. So right now, this is so important. If you live in Nebraska, contact your state senator and ask them to support our resolution to limit the size, scope, and jurisdiction of the federal government. Make sure that you sign the petition, share the petition with those with friends and family in Nebraska, because if you do sign the petition, a copy of that petition goes directly to your representative, which just increases the likelihood of your senator supporting our resolution. So thanks to all the amazing grassroots volunteers on the ground and for our legislative champions for making this victory a possibility. I also, before we get to Pete Hegseth, I want to mention that this week, tomorrow, we are having another COS at home, and we are bringing on a COS heavy hitter, the premier Article 5 scholar, Professor Robert Nadelson. He's going to be talking about Convention of States, about Article 5. He's going to be talking about the myths. It's going to be an excellent COS at home. You can register by going to www.conventionofstates.com and register for this COS at home. Well, we are pleased to be joined by Pete Hegseth, who is the host of Fox and Friends Weekend. He is a senior political analyst with Fox News. He is also an Army veteran. He served in Afghanistan and in Iraq, and he was also a guard at Guantanamo Bay. He received 2 Bronze Stars, and he also received a Combat Infantryman's Badge for his time in Afghanistan and in Iraq. He was the executive director for Vets for Freedom, which is a political advocacy group for veterans. He was also the CEO of Concerned Veterans for America, where he built the largest conservative veterans advocacy organization in America, and he led the charge to bring real reform to the Department of Veterans Affairs. He has also written numerous books, including Modern Warriors, American Crusade, and of course, In the Arena. And he is also a Convention of States endorser and a dear champion for the Article 5 movement. Pete, it is an honor to be with you. Thank you for joining us. How are you doing?
Thank you, Andrew. I'm doing great. Always love being with Convention of States. Feels like home. Could not love and believe more in the mission of Article 5 and what you guys are doing. So thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. We're happy to have you back. So my first question that I want to ask you is, you are on the news every week talking about the DC swamp, talking about the corruption, talking about the craziness that's going on in the political climate. And it just seems as late that it's just getting hotter and hotter within the political atmosphere. But besides being a host and a news personality and a political commentator, you're a grassroots guy as well from Minnesota. And you served your country and you partner constantly with just average Americans. You come side by side with them. So my first question is, how did you, with all these characteristics, how did you get to become a TV host? And how do you keep that perspective?
Well, I appreciate you saying that, because I work very hard to try to make sure to stay in touch with we the people, with where I grew up, with the guys I served with the values that America was truly founded on and actually represent the values of. In fact, I did a speech at CPAC where I talked about that. That when I go out to these diners on Fox and Friends and elsewhere, people pour their hearts out, not about esoteric theories about policy, but about their love for our country and our flag and their Christian faith, or their support for Israel, or the First Amendment or the Second Amendment. And then I said the 10th Amendment, which most people in elite media probably couldn't tell you what it is. And I was mocked for that. Oh, Pete goes to diners and talks to regular people about the 10th Amendment. And then, of course, we got him back by airing a clip. The next week, I went to a diner and talked to people. We played a full clip of how many people I've talked to voiced on TV. That's not even to say what they say off camera, which is even deeper and more meaningful. Precisely the things I was talking about. So I have the wonderful fortune of traveling the country for my job and talking to average folks in every state across our union about what they're really worried about, what they're really passionate about, what they really love, what the purpose is for their life, what they want for their kids and their grandkids. And I'm grateful for it, because it keeps me tethered to where, to what the forgotten men and women of our country that Donald Trump talked about in a way that no other politician had connected to, what they really value and what they really care about. And before that, being in the military, you meet every cross section of race, of socioeconomic background, of geographic background you can imagine, and you're stuck together for years on end, months on end, with no other option but to talk to them and get to know who they are and what they believe. And then, of course, through Concerned Vets for America, which you talked about, we worked really hard traveling the country, multiple tours, 20, 30 stops in cities where we're just, basically it was grassroots organizing amongst veterans in the military and patriotic Americans to say, hey, we got to fight to fix the VA. Hey, vets are a massive part of the voting population. Why don't we let our oath, to defend the Constitution stop when we take off the uniform? It needs to continue. The things you were taught and trained in the military are actually quite effective in reaching out to and organizing in the civilian world as well. And guess what? The battlefield is here. The battlefield for our republic is here. There are really bad, evil ideas on the march, and they've been on the march for a century. And while we've been out building businesses and defeating communism and building the military, the left has been taking over our cultural institutions, our schools. That's the big one. I got a huge project on Fox Nation coming out on that in September about the progressive takeover of our schools over the last 100 years. The left, or the expansion of government, the expansion of dependency, the stripping away of liberties, the separating of God out of all parts of our public square. That's where the left has spent their energy. And as a result, look at the media, look at our social media, look at our educational institutions. That's where the front lines of our battle for freedom and for capitalism really exist. So I'm a TV host by accident. I was a commentator on veterans and military and national security issues for years after I returned from the battlefield and running vets organizations. And then one day Fox and Friends said, hey, have you ever thought about asking questions instead of answering them? And I said, I'll try anything one time. What's the worst I could do? Fail? And so it must have gone okay. And from there, it's created other opportunities. I'm so blessed to be a part of the Fox News and specifically the Fox and Friends family, because we're in touch with an ear to the ground to average people who deserve respect and recognition and honor for the quiet ways in which they preserve and perpetuate our republic. And I paid very close attention to trying to get that right, to never dismiss it, and to try to amplify it, whether it's law enforcement, whether it's vets, whether it's just patriotic Americans. That voice needs to be out there. And if not for Fox, if not for talk radio, if not for Convention of States, and it really a small handful of entities and organizations, we're on the brink. And so I see it as a mission as a host to try to speak my mind about what really matters and give voice to people who are often voiceless amongst elite circles in Manhattan and Los Angeles, who have a whole different set of priorities about what they think about this country. So I take great, I invest a lot in trying to get that right, and I'm humbled by the opportunity to have that kind of platform.
And we're just honored to have you as one of our endorsers, and for all the reasons you listed, being a grassroots guy, for amplifying the voices of the average Americans who are supporting this cause. But you talked a moment ago about fighting for the values, the principles of the founding, because of the 100 years of progressivism and bad ideas that has been working and steadily marching towards the point that we're at right now. So I was wondering if you can maybe just go a little bit further on why you decided to support, become an endorser of Convention of States, coming alongside people like Sean Hannity, Andrew Napolitano, Mark Levin. Why did you decide to put your name or attach your name to this Article 5 movement?
Two reasons, really. One, it's the only solution big enough for the problem. There's so many great organizations out there. There's so many people doing good work, and I'm grateful for that, and I hope they continue to. But when I looked around, it became abundantly clear that a lot of it is just scratching the surface or barely getting at the issue, or maybe one aspect of the issue. And Convention of States won't solve every ill that our country faces, but it is a gift given to us at the Constitutional Convention with almost no debate, because all the founders recognized that something like this, an ability for states and the people to have redress against a federal government that's gotten too expansive and out of control, it was obvious. Well, of course we should allow the state legislatures that option. And of course they should have the ability for an amending convention to restrain the size and scope of government that's gotten out of control. It's beautiful to be a part of something that's tethered to our founding principles, that is a revolution without the bullets, that is big enough to rein in the 100-year expansion and progressive takeover. Convention, I dare you to find something else that is as big in scope, as ambitious in what it attempts to do, and yet totally grounded in we the people, in a grassroots project, going state by state, state legislature by state legislature, to create a process and then a moment by which we the people could actually go around and through Washington, D.C. This does not, Washington, D.C. couldn't stop it if they wanted to. They'll try. They're already trying. The left, every left-wing politician and organization is stacked up against Convention of States in Article 5, and that's the best indication you could have that it's on target. They know what a threat it would be to take down their progressive project, and as a result, they target it. So that's the first reason. It's big, it's bold, it's constitutional, and it's the essence of what sort of free citizens in a republic should be spending their time doing it. And then the second reason I'm with Convention of States is because I've met Convention of States. I've met the people involved, why they got involved, how they treat their volunteers, how they attempt to organize. It's authentic, it's honest, it doesn't misrepresent who they are. It is the opposite of how the left operates. And as a result, I think it's building a real, authentic grassroots movement that can deliver. You can't do this with an AstroTurf group. You can't do this with one legislature or one lobbyist. It's never going to happen. It's too big and it's too ambitious. You have to inform, educate, and inspire people to get involved. And the beautiful part about this is, on the organizing side, is that it's almost an impossible mixture to find. We kind of found it with Concerned Veterans for America, in that you get involved locally in your state and to try to advocate for change at the VA. But even there, that's just one cabinet department, that's one sphere. This is, if you want to save our republic, which is careening out of control, you need to organize with your state legislator, your state rep, and your state senator at your state capital to get a resolution passed that the governor doesn't need to sign. This is just assemblies. And when you do that, you're adding your state to a list of other states who ultimately can save our republic. It's actually an organizer's dream. You've got a local action with a national implication, frankly, a historic implication. And so, but it still takes time, and you still have to have the recognition of the intensity of the moment to get people to take that action. So, and I hope, unfortunately, with every passing day, and especially the first 120 or 30 days of the Biden administration, that crucible is being created and the recognition is increasing. Now we just have to get the word out. I talk about the people that I meet. I meet a lot of great Convention of States volunteers at diners too, by the way. But most people whose instinct is to be pro-limited government, pro-America, pro-capitalism, still don't have a grasp of what Convention of States Article 5 is. And it's not their fault. They're inundated with other messages and other organizations and brush fires of the moment. It takes steady organizing of people that are credible at a national level, and then at a very local level, your neighbor, your school board member, your friend, family members who says, hey, check this out. And then, of course, you got to fight through the misinformation of how people want to mischaracterize it. But ultimately, the opportunity is there, and that's why I'm so passionate and so grateful to be a part of it.
And earlier you mentioned about Convention of States and the ambition that we have at Convention of States, that it's constitutional, it's ambitious, and that it's the solution as big as the problem. At Convention of States, as you know, there are 3 planks to our resolution. There's term limits for elected officials, putting fiscal restraints on the federal government, like a balanced budget amendment or something like that. And there's also just an amendment idea to rein in the federal government's abuses of powers, their overreach, by doing these kind of ironclad restraints through some type of amendment. So given what you see in Washington, D.C. and what you comment on, is there a particular amendment idea that you like most or that you want to see come out of a convention that's going to help drain the swamp in Washington, D.C.?
I mean, of course, it's all of the above. All of those serve a necessary component, and I think they're interconnected. And they're consistent. They're simple, but they're big, and they're the same in all the resolutions that are passed. So when someone makes the criticism, oh, this could get out of control, you're opening up a Pandora's box. What if the progressives got into an amending convention and changed it all? That's not how it works. There's specific confines of what is to be addressed at this constitutional or amending convention. And then if it were to go sideways or in a wrong direction, you can recall delegates, you can pull your support from it. There's protections for that. Listen, I love the idea of term limits, and I love the idea of term limits, of course, not just applying to politicians, because when a politician can't stick around, but the staff and the bureaucrats can, then ironically, they gain even more power. So it has to be term limits across the board. You're serving the people, not enriching yourself or having a permanent position in life in government or life in public service. So I think term limits especially applied across the spectrum of government service, of elected office, so that you don't have a bureaucracy outlasting politicians that are only there for 2 terms, and then the internal mechanisms of the swamp stay right there. Balanced budget, my goodness, they're printing money out the wazoo right now, which we're watching. I don't think we can even conceive the ramifications of what that could end up creating for us, but it's totally unsustainable, not tethered at all. And that's why taxation today is almost entirely punitive, because most of this is not paid for and financed with debt and other things that, if interest rates change 1 iota, creates a crux and a crucible vice grip where our enemies, our predators, ultimately, like places like communist China, have a lot more leverage than they already have. And then, of course, listen, we've lived through COVID-19 and the way in which, the manner in which, whether it's emergency authorization or any other justification the government takes, they're happy to take away our liberties like this. And it's usually under the guise of health or safety, but they've got any number of other ways to do that. And if we're not tethered to the fact that our rights are endowed by God, and anything not enumerated in the Constitution is specifically afforded to the people in the states, we jumped that shark. And so that's a non-answer for you, I know, but I love all 3, because I think without any one of them, you're still only just addressing a small portion. I think the three of them are a good combo.
You're not out of the ordinary by selecting all three. Most people say, I love all three. I can't just pick only one. So no worries on that. And like you were saying, all three are necessary to roll back, root and branch, the 100 years of bad ideas that we have been seeing. I want to kind of transition to the grassroots for just a moment. We talked about it earlier. You are not just an endorser. You have taken words and you've put them into action by just being such by amplifying the COS voice. You interviewed Mark Meckler multiple times and you've given him a platform to talk about Convention of States. And you've also come alongside the grassroots volunteers for COS in Minnesota. You've even gone to rallies there at St. Paul, and you have you've really been an influence in galvanizing the COS supporters on the ground. So would you be able to just talk a little bit about that experience and what it's like working with the grassroots?
All I can say is I want to do more. That's all I can say. I feel like I've made a very minor and humble submission. When I sit back and think about my time spent, I only wish there was more latitude and time for me to spend on Convention of States. And maybe someday there will be. But in the meantime, the extent to which I can use the platforms that I do have to advance familiarity with it is something I've done as best I can and something I want to do even more, which is why the number of state volunteers, the folks in New Jersey reach out a lot, a number of states reach out. Michigan's got a rally coming up. Man, I would love to be there. I don't know if I can make it. I've been to ones in Minnesota. So I've said to all the folks at Convention of States, send me the requests. Never feel sheepish about asking. And if I can do it, I will. And if I can't, it's only because I cannot. And, I get paid to do speeches in a lot of other capacities. I don't take a dime for Convention of States because I want it to be the cause that I can commit myself to. Number one on the outside. I mean, other than the idea of our classrooms and education, which I'm pouring myself into on a project in Fox Nation, which I think Convention of States folks are going to love, by the way. I mean, it's right down our alley as far as why we're doing what we're doing. Other than education, I think Convention of States is my hope and prayer would be that where it becomes the place where every patriot ultimately looks around and says, well, I don't want our country to fracture. I don't want a civil war. But things need to change. And this is the revolution without the bullets that our founders gifted us. That hopefully would be the place where they land. And to the grassroots side of it, I came to Convention of States because so many people came up to me at events years and years ago, and with buttons or shirts, and I would see it. And at first, as I've said before, I sort of dismissed it as, who are these? It sounds a little fringe. This is back in my establishment flirtation days, which I've been very open about my multiple and necessary conversions toward what our republic really represents and how far gone it really is. They would just keep coming up and say, you got to check it out, you got to look at it, you got to check it out, you got to look at it. And then one day I finally did, which once you actually dig into it, you say, holy, what, who knew? And of course, everyone tries to dismiss it as radical, which it isn't. And then I, as Mark Meckler and I have told the story many times, I just emailed the info account and thought, well, I've run grassroots organizations before. If you're not monitoring your email account, you don't have your organization in order. And within a day, there was a response, or immediately there was a response. And just a few days later, I was on the phone with Mark, talking to him about it. And meeting Mark is to meet a man totally dedicated selflessly to this cause and the grassroots, very tethered intentionally to what people are hearing and feeling as the pulse of this movement. So it isn't a bunch of DC folks who started a group and then they start some state chapters, and then maybe you can be involved, but you're probably just going to get a t-shirt out of it and a title, but nothing. Now, this is the real thing. This is grassroots organizing, and people are out there and they are active, working on state legislators. And I read every single one of the emails I get because it's usually an update on this state is now in this, it's in the House or the Senate in this state legislature. We just need one more. I've placed a few phone calls here or there to certain places at certain times. Wherever I can be helpful, I want to be helpful. But to people watching, if you're looking for an organization to be actively engaged and involved in, this is your organization, because they will put you to work and they will ask you to engage with your state legislature. And it takes the spade work of going up to your state capitol or to your representative's office and frankly educating them, or bringing someone with who's really well versed on Article 5 so that their questions or skepticisms or hesitations are met with answers. And then once the light bulb goes off for people, and frankly, what the left is doing on so many quarters is causing new light bulbs to go off. They say, man, what do I have to lose? Yeah, this is it, let's do it. So, but it takes volunteers, and the grassroots at convention states are fundamental to that.
Well, Pete, I know you're a busy guy, so I got one last question for you, and then we'll get you out of here. So in light of Memorial Day and just remembering our fallen heroes, and as a veteran who cares deeply about veterans and the security of veterans, what does Memorial Day mean to you?
It reminds me to live worthy of the sacrifice of generations of men and women who put it all on the line and didn't come home. And our republic will be damned the minute we forget that, the minute we are not willing to truly remember that the freedoms we enjoy today only came at a cost. I mean, I'm doing a series at Fox Station called Untold Patriots Revealed as well, where we go to Revolutionary War battlefields and discover patriots whose names are long since forgotten, and we're trying to bring them back and revive remembrance and understanding of what they went through. And it wasn't a declaration of independence that won us our independence. It was an army. It was a ragtag army of citizens willing to say, I love my liberty and my freedom so much that I may die on this field without shoes on, with terrible provisions for a cause that, let's be honest, most of the Revolutionary War looked more or less hopeless against the most powerful empire in the world at the time. So it has always been patriots willing to say, I will fight and give my life if necessary so that the next generation can enjoy those freedoms. So that's where my head's at. Of course, I think about the guys that I knew who didn't come home. And I do two things intentionally when thinking about that. I grab my kids and I say, we're going to a ceremony, Memorial Day ceremony. I grew up on that. It really impacted me. Small town in Minnesota, Winnemingo, they would have a Memorial Day parade, and of course it would end at Memorial Day at the park there, where there was a memorial to the people in the town who'd given so much. Tiny little town, but you look at those grave markers and you say, if this tiny town gave this much, you amplify that. It's like flying over Arlington, and the weight of what's been given, it really does strike you. So and then if I can't do that, or that isn't possible, then I will sit them down, or also sit them down and just walk through Memorial Day, walk through service, walk through sacrifice, remind them. I've done it a number of times, but you can't repeat it too much on kids' ears, especially because the next part of what I want to do with the day is I want to have a big old party, and I want to celebrate. And that's what the guys who never will have another party or another wedding or another day with their kids, that's what they would want, you to enjoy the freedom that they've gifted to us. So it's both. It really is. And I try at Fox to work hard to create content that contributes to that memorialization. So we just launched another episode of Modern Warriors over Memorial Day weekend called Modern Warriors Reflections. And it's all about Memorial Day. These guys are unbelievable heroes, Rangers, SEALs, others who have fought in the last 20 years of conflict, and they memorialize the men they served with, and why things like Memorial Day are so important, especially when you see all the nonsense in our culture these days. So I try to infuse as much Memorial Day into the content we create as well at Fox News and Fox Nation. But I think a lot of those guys would look at the effort here of convention of states and Article 5 and say the new battlefield is at home, and live worthy of their sacrifice by fighting to preserve the freedoms here that are slipping away from us. And it's free citizens in this republic who will have to keep it.
Very well said. Well, Pete, thank you so much for your heart of service, for your humility, and for being a champion for Convention of States. We always appreciate you coming on and talking to us. We hope to have you back soon.
Absolutely, Andrew. Keep calling. Whenever I can, I will. And I'm so grateful for everything you guys are doing. Keep it up.
All right. Take care, Pete.
Thank you.
All right. We're going to transition now to the Article 5 Trivia Giveaway answer with Mike Ruthenberg.
All right, I'm back. Well, was it as great a show as you thought it was going to be? And if your answer is no, you're right, because it was probably better than it was before you thought you'd get to see and hear Pete Hegseth talk about Convention of States and the importance of the work that you are doing. And now let's go back to our trivia question. Remember, our prize was a t-shirt, anything you want. Maybe a Defiant, maybe a We the People, maybe a Hell No Joe shirt if you like your guns, or any other type of shirt that's there in whatever size you want. We undoubtedly have a winner, because the question was, which governmental body or bodies is or are most important to triggering Article 5 convention? And of course, none of you think the federal government, because the whole reason why Article 5, the second provision of Article 5 is in the Constitution, is because George Mason stood up and said, wait, we must have a way in order to pass amendments to the Constitution outside of the Congress, which is the first provision, because they would never restrain their own power should the federal government become tyrannical or out of control. So therefore, the governmental body or bodies that are most important to trigger an Article 5 convention are the state legislatures. State legislatures are key to triggering an Article 5 convention. It takes both houses, and this would be a great trivia question if you didn't know that there's one state in the union that's unicameral, so it only takes the Senate in the state of Nebraska, a unicameral state, meaning they only have one legislative body in their state. It takes both in all 49 other states in order to pass the resolution. When we get 34 of those to pass that resolution, that's the threshold. That's when we go to convention. And you can read more in Article 5. If you pick up the Constitution and read Article 5, it's not very long, and it will make a big difference in your understanding that we, the people, have the power to talk to our state legislatures. It's why we're building the grassroots army, because you can have an impact on your state level elected official, much more than you can with those far away elected officials in Washington, D.C. There's just too many people that are clamoring for their attention, unlike what happens at the state level. So that's what we have. If you didn't win the shirt, I'm really sorry. However, you can go to shopconventionofstates.com, get your own shirt, get your own swag, and keep coming back, because we keep adding more and more to the stories.
Thanks, Mike. Well, it's time for us to sign off. But before we leave, I want to express our deepest gratitude for the fallen heroes of this nation. A Memorial Day is a time to reflect on those who have given everything for this country. As I said earlier, freedom does not come for free. Brave men and women have given their lives for this country. And this Memorial Day, this past Memorial Day, I hope you honored them, that you showed that they deserve your respect. They deserve your reverence. They deserve to be remembered, because we wouldn't have the freedoms we have without their sacrifice. Remember, they are the true heroes of this republic. Make sure that you honor them, not just on Memorial Day. Honor them every day that you live. Honor them and remember their amazing sacrifice. Well, that's all that we have for you for this episode. We hope that you will join us next Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time for another edition of Facebook Live. And we hope that you will enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you so much for joining. Bye.